So today is August 8th, 2019, the 33rd anniversary of the 1986 Transformers movie. And oh man, the things that could be said. We talk about a lot about this movie on the podcast, but I don't know. I just like to always just celebrate this movie. It's always been very important to me. It was my cherry popper, so to speak, when it came to Transformers. This was my first introduction to Transformers. I went to see the movie when it was in theaters. I want to say that I'm almost guaranteed that it wasn't on its opening day because August 8th in 1986, it was a Friday. And I know for a fact I did not go to see the movie on a Friday. I saw it on a weekend. It could have been the weekend of the opening. It could have been the weekend after. But knowing how my movie theater was back in the day, which had, get this, only 3 screens, it probably wasn't not long after it came out because it probably would have been shuffled away and something else would have been in its place not long after that. But I do know that I saw it in theaters. I saw it with my next door neighbor with his mom, and it changed a lot of things in my life. I mean, I don't think I would be here today talking about Transformers if it wasn't for the 86 movie, because the impact that the 86 movie had on me, and then having those fond memories of Transformers growing up, and then when Beast Wars came out, or Beasties for us Canadians, when that showed up on television, and me going like, oh man, my love of Transformers, and now it's kind of back, and it's with the best kind of animation that's available at the time in Beast Wars and Beast Machines, and in Beasties, and just all of that, and just going onto the internet afterwards in 96 and the online fandom and the domino effect from that all spawned from this 1986 movie. Now let's talk about the 86 movie. Let's talk about stuff that, some people don't usually talk about how when you really think about it, it's still the worst grossing of all the Transformer movies of all time, which is kind of sad when you think about it, because to many of us, it's still the best Transformer movie ever made, regardless of nostalgia. And it's funny because when we look up numbers, like when we look up numbers in relation to this movie, like Box Office Mojo a lot of times is kind of the measuring stick of all this information and stuff, and they just have nothing. They just kind of go like, oh, hey, like there was a domestic, lifetime gross of about, 6 million, and it's, we don't know the production budget. And they don't even have foreign numbers either, like how much they made worldwide. Well, I could say this much. Like in 1986, we had An American Tail, which was another animated movie. It was done by Don Bluth. For people who don't remember, it's the one with the mouse. It's the mouse from Russia and his Russian kind of Jewish family. It was a Don Bluth production. And that was also made in 1986, and that had a production budget of $9 million, and that's Don Bluth's production. Here's a former Disney guy, in his production studio. So if that movie, and that movie was gorgeous looking, animation-wise, if that movie in the exact same year had a $9 million budget, Nelson Shin with Toei and everything that was going on there, I'm pretty sure they did it plenty on the cheap. And I'm going to take an estimate of probably a $5 million budget, maybe $5.5 million, but no more than that. It was, you're talking a 1 hour, 30-minute movie. There was very little that was on the cutting room floor. I mean, there's very little deleted scenes, if at all, in terms of animation. Very little was left out of the movie. So not a lot of waste. The voice actors, hey, same thing. Like, yeah, they got Leonard Nimoy, they got Orson Welles, they got Judd Nelson, but they weren't like, like A-lister, at the time. Orson Welles was a big name, but he wasn't like the A-lister of movies and everything like that for 1986. He was, famous from stuff previously. Same thing, Leonard Nimoy, you could say what you want about Spock, but he wasn't like an A-lister kind of dude, even in 1986. So they probably got those guys affordably. Judd Nelson probably was the closest thing to probably A-lister, but again, for its time, coming off of The Breakfast Club and everything. But that being said, he probably was on the cheap too because of how young he was. So that being said, I think this movie, despite the fact that it could be perceived as a bomb, probably just within its own timeline back in 86 and maybe a little bit later for Japan's release, I think it more than made up its money. I mean, if the lifetime gross is $6 million, And that's back then. That's not even factoring in inflation. It made its money back easily. And then when you factor in the foreign numbers, which I'm pretty sure it did well in the UK, at least to some extent, and I'm pretty sure it did well in Japan to some extent. And we all know for a fact the amount of times that this movie has been re-released and reissued and DVD versions and Blu-ray and everything. I guarantee Hasbro and Sunbow and Marvel and everyone, they made their money back a long time ago from this movie. This movie did very well for them. And, you could say what you want about how it affected Transformers for the 80s and how it really was. And I'll agree with it, it was the turning point for the brand in that, Transformers was really sitting high in 1985. And it was probably the peak of its popularity back then, but then it just all took a downward spiral after the 86 movie. But it was what it was. In 1987, we were going to have the debut of Ninja Turtles, and that would be the next thing. So, and Transformers would always stick around regardless of that, always evolving, always changing to match the times, and would make its grand return as a number one selling product with Beast Wars. In 97, 98 would probably be its peak toy sales with Beast Wars for the holiday season. But it's just, the 86 movie was very important to a lot of us, especially for us 80s kids and 90s kids who were able to either see it in theaters or to be able to rent it when the video market rental scene was just, such an important thing. I know for me, I saw the 86 movie and then that was kind of it. But then when Beast Wars came out, and then, this is like, the beginning of the internet era, and we really didn't have nostalgia. We didn't really have, nostalgia wasn't a marketing thing yet. And it was just kind of I want to call it the guerrilla kind of nostalgia that we had in the 90s, where it's like, hey, dude, remember this? And I remember I used to rent the 86 movie. This was like, I want to say 1998, 99, like just before the turn of the century. I used to rent the 86 movie from this video rental place for the people who are still old enough to remember what those are, called Movie Land. And I used to rent the 86 movie, and then I would go to this anime store, this anime card store that I used to go to, and they used to have a massive big screen TV in their store. When I mean massive for, for 1998 massive. And I used to bring this video that I would rent from another video store, and we'd play it in their store. And I remember people would just crowd around because it'd all be people going like, yeah, I remember the 86 movie. Oh my God, I remember Transformers. Hey, remember that Optimus Prime guy? Hey, remember that dude with the tape cassette and the screechy voice jet dude and the guy who turned into a gun? So we would play that, and it was just, it was like moth to a flame. Like everyone would just stop and stay in the store and watch the movie. And I would love that because it was kind of like me going like, I almost felt like a Jehovah's Witness going like, this is my religion. I want to introduce you to it. And I have so many great memories with the 86 movie. So many. Like, it's just, to me, that's my, like, if there's one thing with Transformers that gives me the most nostalgic feels, it's the 86 movie. Like, I could just listen to the OST, the soundtrack, even just the non-vocal stuff, whether it be Escape or, Attack on Autobot City or Autobot Decepticon Battle, and just that music, it's just it's ingrained in my soul, and it just brings me back every time I listen to it to those simpler times in life. And it's funny because even though it was a 1986 movie, those feelings kept on going into the 90s because the 86 movie was still something that was played frequently and watched frequently in my life in the 90s. Because every time I would rent it, I'd watch it like 3-4 times. I'd always be like, okay, I'm going to rewind it when rewinding was a thing, and I'd play it. And then I'd be like, okay, I'll just play it and I'll just watch, the opening battle and the attack on Autobot City and the death of Optimus Prime. And then as I'm watching it, I'm like, okay, maybe I'll just watch the rest of it. And that would happen every time. Like, I would just burn through the movie constantly. And it's kind of sad because I wish I kind of went back years later and bought that VHS copy from Movieland, because I think I rented it from them probably more than any other person ever rented the movie from them. But years later, I would just end up owning everything. I own an original, like, perfect copy of the 86 movie VHS from back in 1987, I think, when it was released on VHS. Point is, watch the hell out of that VHS and just have tons of great memories with it. And it's just, I don't know what else we could bring to the table and talk about the 86 movie at this point. I just wanted to just like share my memories with it, and I want anyone else to share their memories with it, because I figured this would be a good day to kind of like have a little bit of a discussion and share what we like about the 86 movie and what memories we have with it. Because again, that older guard of the Transformer fandom, the 86 movie is just this, it's the centerpiece. It's the thing we're probably the most proud of more than anything. Even if you're like, if you're an 84, 85 guy that really just likes Optimus Prime, Prowl, Bumblebee, you still like the 86 movie because of what it did for the brand in terms of legitimacy from, let's say, the underground culture going into the 90s and hip-hop culture and stuff like that. And just, the fact that it had swearing. But anyways, let me know what you think about the movie. Share your opinions, share your love, and I'd love to hear it.